All right. What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday. Great to be here. I am Dr. Jeff Moore, currently serving as the CEO ICE. Thrilled to be here on another Leadership Thursday. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in on the podcast, live on the IG, on YouTube, wherever you're coming from. Thanks for being here. We are going to talk about the Holy Strainer today. But before we do, it is Gut Check Thursday. Let's get the chat about the workout out of the way. It sounds like a grinder. So for those of you who are going to battle with us on Gut Check Thursday, here's what we've got. We've got 100 calories on the bike. That's the goal. We're going to accumulate that. But every minute on the minute, you're going to hop off and knock out 2 devil's presses with 50s. Okay, but not 0. So you get that first clean run on the bike. So I would encourage us to hammer that first minute on the bike. And then every minute you've got to pop off and knock out those 2 devil's press, which I'm trying to do the math in my head. You're not going to have, by the time you get off that bike, get down there, get up, get down there, get up, get back on the bike, you're not going to have a whole lot of time on that bike and you are going to be a bit winded. So I'm curious to see how many minutes that takes us. Please hashtag ICE trained when you do that workout. Tag ICE Physio. So fun to see everybody going after it around the country. As far as courses coming up, there are a million of them. This weekend, we have a couple of sold out courses. The ones that still have seats left are the following: cervical spine in Greenville, South Carolina, extremity management over in California by San Diego National City, total spine thrust with, I believe, Justin, Britt, and Jesse. All of them are going to be there. That's in Everett, Washington. We have fitness athlete pregnancy and postpartum in Fenton, Michigan at the headquarters at Health HQ CrossFit Fenton. We've got lumbar spine in Stephen Point, Wisconsin. We have rehab of the injured runner in Guilford, Connecticut. I have no idea if I said that right. We are going to be firing off this weekend. Hey, online wise, Essential Foundations, Fitness Athlete Essential Foundations starts on the 12th of this month. So all sorts of good stuff live and online coming at you. Okay, let's talk about this. So the strainer, first of all, let's talk about the strainer. So the strainer is an underrated device, kitchen utensil, right? Very unassuming. Most folks going with that very plastic version. Not a whole lot of those big steel robust ones left that our folks had. Nobody ever calls it by the right name, the colander, right? We all call it the strainer. It's in some neglected drawer. It's not a highly praised device in the kitchen, but boy, when you don't have it, tell me you don't notice it. Tell me when you're trying to separate those ingredients with a spoon and you're losing half your ingredients in the sink and the garbage disposal. It's absolute mayhem when you don't have the strainer, because what it does is incredible, right? It just simply separates discarded things that are unnecessary, discards of them, and retains all the goods. Today, we're talking about doing exactly that, but with knowledge, not pasta, right? But this idea, this concept is fascinating. This ability to unassumingly remove anything you don't need and retain all the goods, that skill set from a knowledge growth perspective is the holy grail. That's it. If I look at things that separate people, this ability is probably at the very top of the mountain. So let me tell you what happens to most of us to make this make some sense. So for most of us, we decide at some point on a group of people or programs, philosophies, political parties. It doesn't matter, right? We decide on one of these things. We decide who we do, what we do and don't like. Then we believe everything from the former and nothing from the latter. This is generally how our systems work. The core of this problem is that we lack the ability to remain engaged once we're triggered, which eventually, once we decide that we sort of don't like somebody or something or some philosophy, that triggering becomes almost immediately, right? The moment we see their logo, the moment we hear their voice, right, we are triggered immediately. And we lack the ability to remain engaged thereafter. The mechanism that underlies this is that emotion hides the truth. Because when we get triggered, the internal dialogue that starts to take place deafens you. It deafens you from hearing anything after that. You all know what I'm talking about, right? If you think back to the last time you caught a clip of somebody you're not a fan of, right? Or heard something from a certain group or philosophy that you disdain, The moment they started talking, you were already tuned out because now your entire internal dialogue was about why you don't like that person. The problem is that person was still offering something of which you were totally deaf to because that internal mechanism had taken over. The unfortunate result of this is that most people are only able to learn from a very small group of people. This is the problem. The elusive skill on the other side is to stop doing this, right? It's to stop saying, I agree with this person or this group, and instead to be able to say, I agree with that. I don't agree with this. In other words, to separate the content from the source and analyze it unemotionally. If you can learn to do that, you can now learn from everyone. If you can learn from everyone, your growth will accelerate at an unimaginable level because this is so rarely accomplished. This ability to separate the content from the source and to analyze it unemotionally, if you look at what separates people's growth trajectories, this probably sits as the great differentiator. Okay, so how? How do you become the strainer? How do you just allow the things you don't need to see or think about go through while retaining the goods? Do it unemotionally and do it for every single possible source of information. You do it with practice, right? Every skill requires practice. Here's a few ways for those of you who are like, I want to gain this skill. I know I do this. I know as soon as I hear someone that triggers me, I can feel that internal dialogue starting. There is no way they could say something after that I would believe or be able to retain or be able to utilize. I know I'm that person. Well, if you are, welcome to the 99% of people, right? If you actually want to change it, here's some strategies, some things that you can do to begin challenging that mechanism and become one of the few people that can learn from everybody. Okay, tool number one, use the once removed method. The once removed method. Here's what I mean by that. When you're trying to challenge yourself to learn from a source that you're currently triggered by, ask somebody that you have a ton of respect for someone who likes this person, group, or ascribes to it, or what have you. Ask that person that you have a lot of affinity and respect for the 3 best content sources from that person, that group, philosophy, whatever, that's triggering you. Here's why this works. The affinity of the person who's directly pointing you to the resource often offsets the trigger from the person that you're struggling to learn from. So it's the once removed method. Go to somebody that you really respect, who you know is utilizing some of the material from the triggering source, and say, hey, can you give me 2 or 3 things, resources, articles, whatever, from that entity that you think that I need to read and learn from? And I'm telling you, because you're going and getting it from someone that you respect, you're going to be able to retain more of it. And this is a really nice way to step into being able to learn directly from that triggering source. Go to somebody you respect, get the resources from them, and that affinity helps to offset the triggering. It's a really good first step in. Okay, tool number 2, take a piece that you know to be well thought of from this group that's triggering you, digest it, but take notes and only write down positive things. So a lot of you annotate or take notes or short form, right? These longer pieces of content. Do that, but tell yourself you're only going to write down the positive things. There is definitely something about that mechanism of writing down, right? Of taking the time of underlining. There's definitely something about that changes your psychology around the material that you're digesting. If that material has the threat of triggering you, commit to when you start, you're only pulling the positives. What it does is it totally changes your lens on what you're looking for to jump off that page. There's some great literature that we don't actually read very much, right? Of these long pieces of work, what your brain does way before you start digesting it is it commits to what it's looking for. If you're looking for the positives, you're going to fight that internal negative dialogue. If you keep doing that, you're going to start getting really good at being a strainer, no matter what the source is, because you're now learning to separate source from content, especially from an emotional energy perspective. So if you say, okay, just doing this one piece, just this one moment, all my energy's on it. I'm only pulling the positives. Your brain is scanning for that, which means you're fighting the negatives. Try that. Annotate only the positives. Okay, number 3, final one. Share their quality work. This one is ego tough, right? Because if you really digest what's bothering you about this other source group, et cetera, you don't want to see their philosophy propagated. That's oftentimes what you feel. But you need to rise above that. You have to decide that you're going to get in the habit of sharing work because it's important, not sharing the work because of its source. You become a very different kind of contributor to your entire field of thought when you decide that you're going to do that. And by putting that out there, it gets you over that standoff. It says, look, it's not about us, right? And the other person probably doesn't even care, right? But in your mind, you've made up a lot of stories, but you're not going to let that stop you from sharing something important. And by doing that, it breaks down a lot of those barriers. It begins to, it's kind of like mindfulness and focusing on the pain as opposed to trying to push it away, right? It really tends to dull the emotional power that it has. Like, look, I'm putting this out there. It's good work. It is what it is. That it is what it is. Those kind of things are what begin to break down some of that triggering, some of that heightened emotion. And that's what it begins to allow you to take in quality content from any source, the sharing of it. Putting it out there, deciding that you are now someone who shares work because it's important, not shares work because of the source, is one more way that you can begin to break down these barriers. Team, those are 3 huge tools. If you want to become the strainer, if you want to become someone that can retain the goods from any source and discard all of the unnecessary and do so unemotionally, use the once removed method. Grab somebody you respect who you know follows and says, look, I want 2 things and I'm going to digest them in detail. Number 2, take notes, but only the positives. I promise you, it changes the emotional energy you bring to that person's work. Number 3, share. That tells yourself your mission is sharing things that matter. It's not about the source. It's about the work. Do those 3 things and you start changing your consciousness into the effective strainer that allows you to learn something from everyone. If you do that, you become incredibly unique in the space of growth because so few people can do this. The strainer's unappreciated. The ability to do it with knowledge is what's going to accelerate your growth. Think about it. I hope you enjoyed the episode. PTOnice.com is where all the goods are. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts. Share your battles with us, right? We're all in this struggle of being emotionally triggered and thus becoming deaf to all the quality knowledge that follows. Can you begin to fight this? Learn something from everyone. Do that. You're a totally different animal. Have a wonderful Thursday, everybody. Cheers.